This month, as NFL training camps move into full swing, the league is filled with young, dynamic African-American quarterbacks.
Wilson breaks a tackle.
But tonight, you're going to hear the untold story of the men who paved their way, who to this day share an unbreakable bond.
My offensive line at Denver were white and from the South. Not only had they not played with a black quarterback before they got to the pros, they never played with a black player, period.
Their journey was long, humiliating.
I mean, I got death threats in different places we went.
And this is what year, Warren?
This is like 1990.
But ultimately triumphant.
Quarterback, number 17, Doug Willams.
Little boy from Zachary, Gremlin, got a chance to play in the Super Bowl.
Say the number 42 and you immediately associate it with Jackie Robinson and the struggle to break baseball's color barrier. In pro football, there is no equivalent name and number. Hard to believe, but right through the mid-1990s, the job of NFL quarterback was pretty much reserved for whites only. The widespread belief by coaches and front office personnel being a black man didn't have what it takes to command the most powerful and demanding position in sports. This month, as NFL training camps move into full swing, the league is filled with young, dynamic African-American quarterbacks named Kaepernick, Newton, Griffin, and Wilson. Tonight, you're going to hear the untold story of the men who paved their way, who to this day share an unbreakable bond. Their journey was long, humiliating, but ultimately triumphant. A 100-yard drive to history.
1st and 15. Wilson. End zone. Caught. Touchdown, Seahawks. What a throw by the rookie. Wilson now trying to circle.
Last season, rookie Russell Wilson led the Seattle Seahawks into the NFL playoffs,
Breaks a tackle.
lighting up the league with his arms and legs.
Tremendous individual effort for the first down.
Drafted in the 3rd round, some scouts said Wilson was too short to play quarterback. No one said he was too black.
I see myself as a quarterback.
Wilson fires deep down the left side.
Who happens to be black.
The leaping catch made. Touchdown.
Were you aware of the history of the position, racially, the stereotypes that were associated with it?
You know, I was definitely aware of it. I don't think that we look at race as much. Being grown up in the South, I definitely think it's still there, but I don't think it is what it used to be.
What it used to be at quarterback was an all-white club until October 6, 1968, a largely forgettable affair between the Denver Broncos and Cincinnati Bengals. Except on that day, Marlin Briscoe became the first black quarterback to start an NFL game.
My offensive line at Denver were white and from the South. Not only had they not played with a black quarterback before they got to the pros, they never played with a black player, period.
Growing up in Omaha, Nebraska in the 1950s, Briscoe always played quarterback, even though his black friends in the neighborhood told him it was a dead-end street. But Briscoe was determined to lead, not follow, and he did in high school and at Omaha University, where he was an All-American. In 1968, he was drafted in the 14th round by Denver. And they tell you what?
Well, they tell me that, I'm an athlete.
At the time, athlete was the code word for a cold, cruel NFL fact. If black quarterbacks like Briscoe had any hopes of playing in the pros, they would have to switch positions to wide receiver or defensive back.
And I said, okay, I'll play defensive corner, but you got to give me a 3-day trial at quarterback.
Just give me 3 days.
Just give me 3 days. And in those 3 days, I did very, very well.
In week 4, with his starting quarterback injured and the backup struggling, Denver head coach Lou Saban had little choice but to give Marlin the Magician, as Briscoe was known, a shot. The rookie performed more than a few magic tricks, throwing for 14 touchdowns in 5 starts, setting a Broncos rookie passing record that has never been equaled, even by the great John Elway.
Once I proved that I could play, all the other stuff and all those fears and doubts and negative myths, they were dispelled.
But even a magician couldn't make those doubts disappear. Despite his success, Briscoe found himself on the wrong side of a white brick wall. You've just had a really good rookie year.
Right.
They're having a quarterback meeting in Denver?
In Denver.
And they don't ask you to come to it?
I wasn't invited.
You weren't invited?
No.
Seeing the writing on that wall, Briscoe left the Broncos and ended up in Buffalo, but as a wide receiver. He would go on to become an All-Pro, and later in 1972 win a Super Bowl with the undefeated Miami Dolphins. He left the game in 1976. You play 8 years in the NFL. How many games do you start or play at quarterback again?
One play.
One snap.
One snap.
How much of it was just pure institutional racism?
About 95%.
For the most part, you understand the lay of the land.
James Harris felt the full force of racism, the Klan and cross burnings, growing up in the segregated South in the early 60s.
Down here was hard-working families.
Nicknamed Shaq, he taught himself to throw using a biscuit can. But here in Monroe, Louisiana, he harbored no illusions for the future of black quarterbacks.
They marched on Washington today.
But in 1963, inspired by Dr. Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech, Harris's own dreams came into sharp relief.
Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
You know, one day you'd be judged not by the color of your skin, but the content of your character. When I heard him say that, you know, I realized that by the time I graduate, maybe somebody will be able to play quarterback. And I decided then that I wasn't going to switch.
As a quarterback, James Harris led Carroll High School to 26 straight wins and a state championship, catching the eye of Eddie Robinson, the head coach at historically black Grambling State University.
Now get down and go for that, man. Just move fast.
Robinson, who would become a coaching legend, had already put nearly 30 players in the NFL, but never a black quarterback. In the 6'4", 210-pound Harris, Robinson saw the potential to make history. Harris would be the chosen one. Coach, how important was it to Coach Robinson to break the color line at quarterback in the NFL?
It was extremely important to coach. It was almost like a crusade.
Doug Porter was an assistant coach and offensive coordinator for 8 years under Eddie Robinson.
When James came along, he said he's tall enough, he's got a strong enough arm, he's intelligent enough, he has the emotional maturity to deal with this situation. And he said, I think this is the guy.
But tell the back where he's going, James. Let's go. All right, let's go.
At Grambling, Robinson became a father figure to Harris. Preaching to get an equal chance in the NFL, Harris would have to be twice as good as anyone else. To increase the odds, Robinson opened up his run-oriented offense to feature his quarterback's arm.
I realized how important it was, you know, to him that I'd be prepared to play quarterback. It was all about the pro game.
James needed these opportunities to show the scouts that he could throw the football deep, he could throw short, he could throw with finesse. He could do all of the things that you would ask a quarterback in the NFL to do.
Harris led the Tigers to 3 consecutive conference titles. As a senior in 1968, he was named the Black College Player of the Year. But he wasn't drafted until the 8th round by the Buffalo Bills, a team with 2 veteran white quarterbacks already on its roster. Unsigned and with little money in his pocket, Harris arrived at Buffalo's training camp, where he says Bills management sent him a series of not-so-subtle messages.
And when I first get in the office, I read where they gonna have me to switch, play wide receiver, while I'm learning to play quarterback. I'm thinking that, how I'm gonna do this? I'm saying, I'm not switching, and I see where this is heading.
While other players got hotel rooms, the team put Harris up at the YMCA.
$6 a night, a room about big as this. I could turn the TV on with my feet.
And handed him a job to put some money in his pocket.
I was working in the equipment room, and I was cleaning cleats.
Say that again? They brought you up to work in the equipment room?
Right, that was my job.
A drafted player?
A drafted player.
Most valuable player in your conference, Black College All-American, and you're working in the equipment room doing cleats?
And I knew that was out of line.
It disgusted us But also it let us know that we had picked the right guy. See, someone else, they would have stormed out of the room, slammed the door, and told them, you know, you go stick it or something like that. But we knew James was not going to do that. He was going to keep his emotions under control. That this was going to be a guy who was going to almost take the steps like Jackie Robinson had taken, you see.
In 1969, that's exactly what James Harris did, becoming the first black quarterback to start a season in NFL history. In 1974, he led the Los Angeles Rams to the NFC Championship game and earned MVP honors in the Pro Bowl. But in 13 seasons, Harris played constantly under the microscope and under repeated death threats and was never the face of a franchise. I never played quarterback, only black quarterback. Those are your words.
I was referred to as a, black quarterback. And every article was written, that way. It affected my play. I know I tried to play perfect.
Incredibly, 20 years later, there were still just 7 African-American quarterbacks in the league. 7 out of 91.
We just wanted to become quarterbacks, just like running backs were running backs, wide receivers were wide receivers. We wanted to be just quarterbacks.
Warming up is Warren Moon. He's the Washington quarterback.
In 1978, Warren Moon quarterbacked the University of Washington
Moon goes deep.
to a stunning upset of Michigan in the Rose Bowl.
Moon lights up their life here in Washington.
Yet on draft day, Moon discovered a decade after the color line was broken.
Touchdown, Warren Moon.
Little had changed.
Nobody came out and gave me individual workouts from pro teams to see how I could throw the football or whatever, put me through drills and to see just what type of arm I had and what type of footwork I had and all those different things.
So no combine?
No combine.
No interest?
No interest.
Are you angry?
I was very bitter, very, very bitter. I felt like I had at least put myself in a position to deserve an opportunity. I didn't care if I was a third rounder, a fifth rounder. They had 12 rounds back then. Somebody could take me in the 12th round as a quarterback.
Warren Moon is in.
Undrafted, Moon went to Canada, where he played 6 seasons for the Edmonton Eskimos, leading them to 5 Grey Cup championships, their equivalent of the Super Bowl. But in 1984, Moon got a large dose of revenge. The league that once rejected him saw a bidding war for his services before Moon signed a big free agent deal with the Houston Oilers. You were the highest paid player in the NFL when you come in.
Right. Can you believe that? From a guy who nobody wanted, didn't want me to play quarterback, to being the highest paid player in the National Football League at that time.
Moon played 17 often spectacular seasons in the NFL, throwing for nearly 50,000 yards and 291 touchdowns. Virtually all of those seasons, he said, colored in racial slurs and threats.
In the pros, you can hear the N-word and all those other things.
And did you hear it in Houston?
Oh, you heard all of that.
Yeah. Far more than once?
Far more than once. Far more than once. I mean, I got death threats in different places we went.
And this is what year, Warren?
This is like 1990.
1990. Leaving Moon ever cool on the outside, seething within.
I played pretty much my whole career that way, with a chip on my shoulder, with I'll prove it to you that I can be one of the best. And I think that chip and that drive is what helped me play for as long as I did and at a higher level as I did.
I was thinking it could be more like a boulder on your shoulder.
You're probably right. At times it was, because you felt like not only did you have to play well for yourself, but you were playing for your race. It was a burden that you played with, but you played with it proudly because you knew you were doing something that was going to help another generation of guys.
If there was an Emancipation Day for black quarterbacks, it was January 31st, 1988 in San Diego. The day former first-round draft choice Doug Willams started at quarterback in the Super Bowl for the Washington Redskins.
From Grambling, quarterback, number 17, Doug Willams.
Like Harris, Willams was a Grambling man, the second generation of Coach Eddie Robinson's dream to shatter the color barrier.
you play in the Super Bowl, you know, and I guess I thought about how I got there. You know, little boy from Zachary, Gremlin, got a chance to play in the Super Bowl. That's what it was about.
First snap, Elway drops to the 35, and he's throwing it up the far side. Natil is open. Ball coming. Natil catches it for a touchdown.
The first quarter of the game didn't go well at all. Drop passes and missed blocks put Denver up 10-0.
The tight end in the backfield. Williams slips and is sacked at the 25-yard line.
Worse, Williams went down with a hyperextended knee.
I laid there, I saw the trainers come out, and didn't know how much damage I had done.
Did you see him twist his leg when he went down? And Doug
Trainers was about to put their hand on me, and I just told him, don't touch me. Because I said, if I can get up, I want to finish this football game. It wasn't about the pain. It was about getting up.
How many people in the course of your life have said to you, Doug, I was at home, I was watching on television, and I was thinking, just get up, get up.
And no matter where I go, I always run into a guy that might be with his mom, older lady, and they would say, hey, Mom, this that guy you was praying for in that Super Bowl. And she'll come around and say, this him? Well, baby, I just want to let you know I don't know nothing about football, but I prayed for you that day.
Those prayers were answered. Williams got up.
And Williams going deep. Sanders out in front. 80 yards, touchdown.
Then put on one of the most electrifying displays by a quarterback
Williams for Clark. Touchdown.
in Super Bowl history, firing 4 touchdowns in the second quarter alone.
And that's the new Super Bowl record for points in a quarter.
The Redskins routed the Broncos 42-10. A black quarterback, Super Bowl champion, the game's MVP.
I'm watching that game. I'm envious because I wanted to be the first to do it, but I'm so proud and so glad that one of us did it because it needed to be done, because it was going to help quiet some of that stereotype. It was going to quiet some of that criticism that we couldn't do those things that Doug was doing on that field at that time.
I was at the game with the head coach Robinson. That was a big moment for Coach to have one of his own, to win the Super Bowl. You know, he couldn't hold back the tears.
Neither could Marlin Briscoe, but for a far different reason. After finding post-NFL success as a stockbroker, Briscoe took a downward spiral into an addiction to crack cocaine. Where are you that day?
In the San Diego jail.
You're in jail.
San Diego, yeah.
For what?
Drug possession.
So you're watching.
I'm watching, you know, I just cried when the game was over. It just made me so proud. And I felt that I had something to do with this, but he played the game. But, you know, deep down inside, I said, okay.
Tears of joy.
Oh, yeah.
Tears of sadness to a certain
extent? Tears of sadness, you know. And after I got out of the San Diego jail, I moved back to L.A. and didn't do drugs since.
After that day? That moment was so powerful for you?
That day probably saved my life.
In 2006, Warren Moon was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, the first and only black quarterback to receive the game's highest honor, while looking out and paying homage to those who paved his way.
I accept the fact that I am the first, but I also remember all the guys before me who blazed that trail to give me the inspiration and the motivation to keep going forward.
It makes me so proud to know that everything that I had gone through made it all so worth it. But one thing that was very important to me was that those guys, Doug Willams, Marlin Briscoe, James Harris, were all there with me that day. Just remember the history.
Respect it.
And respect it.
Yeah. A postscript to our story. Doug Willams is now in his 9th season as the head football coach at Grambling, where his son DJ will be the starting quarterback this year. Warren Moon, Marlin Briscoe, James Harris, and Willams have formed an organization called the Field Generals to promote the legacy of black quarterbacks. For more on James Harris and others who helped change the face of pro football, there is a new book by Samuel Friedman called Breaking the Line.